Hey there, welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 144. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is some ReAction figures and some Funko Pops that I've acquired over the last couple of months. And honestly, some of these things I've had for a little while now, but as I mentioned, pretty much every time, I'm a little bit behind in showing you my latest purchases. I've got this little stockpile of stuff here. So yeah, some of this stuff is pretty recent. But some of this, especially if you follow me on Instagram as well, I usually post pictures of my new purchases as I get them. So if you're watching this video, you'll be like, didn't I see these like 2 or 3 months ago on Mike's Instagram? And that's true. I am a little bit behind on some of these things. So yeah, I won't waste a whole lot of time in the introduction. I will just kind of dive into it. But one thing I do want to mention is if you are a regular viewer of my videos, you may have noticed a change recently in that you might be seeing some more ads. And to be honest, I don't even know if there's more ads than there used to be or if there even was ads before. I never rewatch my videos once I post them. It takes me not long enough to record these things, and the editing process can be kind of lengthy. So by the time I've shot it and edited it, I really don't want to revisit it. So that's why I count on you guys to mention in the comments if there's anything wrong with the audio or anything like that, because otherwise it just goes up as is, and I don't know if there's anything wrong with it. But anyway, I just recently monetized my YouTube channel, so that's pretty cool. It's nothing I ever really thought about doing, because I'm not really doing this to get rich, of course. If you look at my videos, a lot of them average around 50 or 60 views, so I'm not like, breaking the internet or anything with my musings on toys. But a couple of months ago, I had my friend Scott, who's got a YouTube channel called Great X-Mentations, where he does reviews of X-Men comic books and kind of recaps issues and things like that. It's a cool channel. If you're an X-Men fan, I recommend you go check it out. And if you didn't watch the video that I did with Scott, it was a review of the Hellfire Club Marvel Legends box set. And since he's a big X-Men fan, I brought him on to talk about that with me, and that was a lot of fun. But anyway, we got to talking kind of after we turned off the camera for that episode, and he was telling me about how he'd only recently started his YouTube channel, but he was getting lots of hits, and he monetized it quite quickly. And he wasn't making crazy money, but he was making a few bucks, every week and all that stuff. And I'm sure it's just getting better and better for him because his views just keep going up and his subscribers keep going up. And he was like, you should really get on that. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I should. So I looked into it, and, there are a couple of, criteria you have to meet. Like, you need to have 1,000 subscribers and you have to have a certain amount of view time. So I realized I had the criteria. So yeah, I signed up to monetize my channel. And basically what that means is now I think there's going to be maybe ads at the beginning of my video. Maybe for my really long videos, they might break them up and play a video in between. I don't know. There might be some banners that pop up sometimes. I don't know. You can maybe let me know in the comments. But yeah, hopefully it's not too annoying. But, I watch a lot of YouTube, and, I deal with ads. It's just kind of part of it. So hopefully nobody's too bothered by my ads. But I've always appreciated your guys' views and your comments and, your interaction. But I will just say it's even more welcome and important to me now. I only monetized it less than a month ago. It's been about 3.5 weeks. And so far I have made $9. So nothing crazy, but that's kind of cool. Like I spend, I don't know how much money a week, but I get at least one new figure a week. So you can probably say at least $30, to make this content. So yeah, if I can start, getting a few bucks every week to kind of help out, that's awesome. So please, I always say this stuff at the end of my video, but I think a lot of people don't ever make it to the end of the video. So I'll say it at the start. Please, if you enjoy the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and please comment. I won't pretend to know exactly how the monetization works, but not only is it based on views, but it's also based on interaction and things like that. So I think more comments and all that stuff, the better. And yeah, I legit appreciate you guys commenting. I like conversing with you guys. So by all means, it's very welcome. So yeah, please do that. Anyway, I think that's all I really had to say. But yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool milestone. So I hope it doesn't feel you know, tacky or anything to monetize this stuff, because, you know, if I'm only going to be making $9 a month, you know, that's not going to make a huge impact in my life. But it's cool. It makes the channel feel a little bit more legitimate, I guess, in some way. So yeah, cool. Anyway, so let's take a look at some of my new ReAction figures and some of my new Funkos. So the first ReAction figure that I have to show you is this Masters of the Universe Mantenna figure. Now this one is one that I purchased a while ago, so I have been sitting on this for a few months waiting to show you. And I think this is a pretty great figure. So I usually open most of my figures, as you guys probably know, but when it comes to ReAction figures, one of the biggest appealing things about this toy line is the retro cards with the original artwork that they put on here. You know, it's not like, you know, Star Wars Black Series and Marvel Legends, they have some, you know, some nice artwork on their boxes too sometimes, but it's not the focus of the box. The main thing on the box is like the big window, and you showcase the figure, and there's usually like some small artwork on the side or something like that. But when it comes to ReAction figures, you really get this nice, you know, original artwork on the front that takes up the whole blister card, and it's very reminiscent of toys you would have purchased, you know, kind of back in the good old days. So I do like ReAction figures, and I have opened up a few of them. Like sometimes I'll slice along the side so I can take the figure out, you know, play with it, take some photos, and then still kind of tuck them back inside, and that way I can still pin them to my wall. I don't know why I don't necessarily do that with all of them, but yeah, for this guy, I didn't really feel the need. I kind of was just buying him to display on my wall, and so yeah, it looks great. So not only is the artwork great, but the figure looks really cool too. So I don't know if you can get a good look at him there, but yeah, very cool. On the back of the package, it's just a cross promotion for the other figures. So you see you've got Shadow Weaver, Modulok, Hordak, She-Ra, and Grizzlor. Now, I don't have a whole lot of Masters of the Universe ReAction figures. Part of the reason for that is I have such a large Masters of the Universe like classics collection, and I'm collecting the Origins figures, and I collect a lot of the Masters of the Universe Funko Pops, that I just kind of decided I had to draw the line somewhere, and I didn't really want to collect this line in this format, but I have gotten my favorites. So, Mer-Man was my favorite Masters of the Universe character when I was a kid, but a close second was Mantana. Oops. And here is my vintage Mantana figure from when I was a kid. And so, in the cartoon, Mantana looked like this. He was kind of a dork. He was kind of played for comic relief. He had like skinny little limbs because he was a character with 4 legs. But on the vintage toy, I guess they couldn't figure out a way to do that affordably, so he's still got 4 legs. But you see they're molded together, so there's 2 legs on this side and 2 legs on this side. And it actually makes him look much bulkier. Like he looks buffer than most of the other He-Man figures because he's got those big, thick legs. And his face is scary. Like, it's hard, I don't know if I'm getting good light on here. But he's got this kind of crazy mouth that kind of looks like the Sarlacc pit with these tusks on either side. His eyes are all bloodshot. They look kind of intense. His play feature is that you push the button on his back here, and then his eyes would bulge out like so. You're seeing that on the packaging here. So yeah, I always loved this version of Mantenna, not so much his animated look. So I actually purchased this ReAction figure a while back, which is Mantenna in his toy colors. And I think this was actually the second version that came out. It was more like the variant version. This one had come out first. But I decided to hold out and get this version. And you'll see it's the same toy. The sculpting and stuff is all the same on both of them. But they just painted this one, you know, with the darker colors. He's got the bloodshot eyes instead of the big yellow eyes. Even the card art is the same. You know, they didn't really make him look any buffer or tougher in this one here. It's just, yeah, the difference in colors. But anyway, so I've had this one for a while, the toy color one, and I just thought he looked really cool. And I've been kind of holding off on buying this animated one, but I decided to pull the trigger and pick him up before he became too hard to find. And just since I'll bring him out here for a little bit of a comparison, in the Masters of the Universe Classics line, they took this toy and made an incredible version of it where now he finally has his 4 different sculpted legs. The face is, you know, very intense. He's got the yellow eyes from the cartoon, but they don't look cartoony. He looks, you know, he looks intense. So I love this figure. It's one of my favorite classics figures. And then they did eventually, some years later, make a Filmation, like animated version of Mantenna in the classics line. So here he is again. But this is how he looks. Not nearly so scary, more kind of dorky. And yeah, so I don't know if this character ever would have been one of my favorites if the original toy had come out looking more like this. But I love this original toy. It kind of endeared me to the character that I kind of even like the goofy cartoon version just by association. So yeah, I decided to grab the ReAction figure of the cartoon look. So now I have them both, and I think they're pretty cool. Now, next up I'm going to show you, I bought a couple of Masters of the Universe blind packs. So most of the figures come available like this on the blister cards with the nice artwork. But Super 7 did also release some little blind boxes where you don't know the figure that you're going to get. So let's take a look at those. So here are my 2 Masters of the Universe Evil Warriors ReAction figure blind boxes. So these boxes are purchased. You don't know who's going to be inside. It's one of the Evil Warriors, and on the side of the package, it could either be Mer-Man, Trapjaw, Beastman, or Skeletor. And you see your chances here. It's like 2 per case of getting one of these guys. And then you've got a 1 in 12 chance of getting the variant of this figure. So this character, but in a different paint job. So yeah, I've got 2 of these blind boxes here. And let's pop them open and see which Evil Warriors I got. So here you see I got the regular Beastman figure. So this is him in his standard colors. I think one of the variants of him, it might have had him in his yellow armor instead of his red. Some of the variants they have in these blind boxes are like translucent figures and stuff as well. So let me see, and he also has his whip here, which doesn't seem to want to fit into his hand all that easily. So there's Beastman with his whip. And he's not bad. Pretty cool. Now the thing about this figure is I don't have very many Masters of the Universe ReAction figures, partly because I like my He-Man figures to be big and bulky. I don't think they translate super well into the ReAction figures, so I did not buy many of them. The only one I bought initially was Mer-Man because he's my favorite character, but then I ended up buying Beastman here as my second one. So I have this figure already, although I have him carded, and he's pinned up on my wall. So I don't necessarily mind getting a second one because now I have one that I can open up and fiddle around with. But this is a figure I already had, so I was definitely hoping for maybe a Mer-Man variant or even my first Trapjaw figure, because that would be pretty cool. But the other guy I got, so it is one of the variants. This is not the standard Skeletor. If you look at the packaging again, so I had a 2 in 12 chance of getting the regular Skeletor and a 1 in 12 chance of getting the variant. And that's what I got. So he's not in his standard blue and purple with the yellow skull. This is a gray and black version of Skeletor, which is pretty cool. Honestly, I kind of would have liked the variant of any of these characters over the standard version. So I am happy that I got at least one of them. And there you go. So he's got his black Havoc staff. So there's not much detail in these figures, but that's what you expect. That's part of the charm. They're supposed to be very simple with just their 5 points of articulation. So they move with the arms, the legs, and they turn at the head. And that's all you get. And yeah, so both these guys are pretty cool. They weren't very expensive. Like most ReAction figures, when you buy them carded, are about 18 bucks US. These guys were 10 bucks US. So you're still getting the same quality figure. You're just not getting the card art, which is one of the things that's most appealing about these ReAction figures. But considering these guys are almost half price, that's a pretty cool gamble. Now the problem is I don't know if I'd want to buy too many of these too many more of these blind boxes, because I really wouldn't want to get the same figures over and over again. Then that definitely does start to feel like a bit of a waste of money. But for these two here, I figure I could take a chance on it, and at least I didn't get two of the same figure. Before we move on to the next figure, I did just want to talk about these guys for another minute. That last little bit you saw of me unboxing these figures live, I actually filmed that when I first got these figures back in July, and it is currently October when I'm posting this video. So I have had these guys for quite a while, and these guys came in a box from Big Bad Toy Store, and it was literally like hours before I was leaving for a like 3-day road trip to go to visit the province of Prince Edward Island. So that was kind of cool. And these guys ended up coming with me. Well, actually, it was just Beastman. Beastman here came with me on the road trip, and he kind of became my little travel buddy. My Instagram kind of became a little travel log for that weekend. And that's one thing I want to comment about reaction figures that's sort of so fun, is that I know it's weird, but a lot of adults, toy collectors, like to have a little pocket toy or whatever to bring around with them. And reaction figures are great for that, because they're not breakable, they're not too large. Like, I was able to take Beastman and put him in the sand on the beach, and I was able to put him in the pool, and you know, he's small enough and discreet enough that, you know, nobody really notices me carrying him around in my breast pocket. And you know, it's not like he's a transformer where sand and can get in his joints or anything like that. So these guys are just fun little toys that you can take with you wherever you want to go if you want to take some impromptu toy photos. So yeah, great little figures. The other thing I wanted to mention about these guys before I moved on is that I said in that last segment that Beastman was the exact same as the carded Beastman figure that I already had. Because when Masters Universe reaction figures first came out, the first wave of them, I bought the Beastman figure. And then when this one here was the non-variant version of Beastman, because you know there was the standard and the variant. Since I didn't get the variant, I assumed that this was the exact same figure I already had. It was only later, when I got down my carded version of Beastman to kind of compare them, I realized they were quite different. And I actually like the blind box figure quite a bit more. You see this version of Beastman, he's got you know, a very white face with the blue, I want to say makeup, I guess, on the white face. His chest piece here, the armor, it's just solid red. There's no painted detail on there at all. And his shorts are kind of a bright baby blue. Whereas opposed to this figure here, he's got the painted detail of the blue kind of cross on his armor. He's got the darker shorts. And his face, I think, is painted a lot better with that kind of more yellowish face with the separate white teeth and white eyes, as opposed to just the solid white there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say, so we can move on to the next figure. So the next figure I want to talk about is the Iron Giant. Now, I love the movie, The Iron Giant. I love this character. And when that movie came out, right away I wanted an action figure of this character. And I know they did make toys of that movie, but I never saw them in stores anywhere. I don't think that movie did very well at the box office, so maybe the toys didn't get picked up by many retailers. So yeah, I wanted an Iron Giant figure but couldn't find one. Anyway, back in the day, I worked at Blockbuster Video, and when you bought the VHS of the Iron Giant, you got this little Iron Giant figure, like kind of shrunk wrapped next to the movie. But it was only with the VHS. So I remember being kind of annoyed because I bought the DVD and I was like, do I have to buy this stupid VHS tape just to get the figure? But I think it was actually a customer that bought the VHS tape and didn't want the figure and gave me this figure. So I have had this little Iron Giant action figure for, I don't know, 20 years or so. And like, it's a fine little figure, and it's a 5-point of articulation figure. His head turns side to side. His arms go forward and back. His legs go forward and back. I don't know if you're picking it up, but he has kind of yellowed over the years. He used to all be the same color gray, but there's certain parts of him now which seem to be kind of yellowing, which is kind of disappointing. Like on his back, you can see how he's all solid gray, but the front, here, 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 here. It's all discolored. Anyway, so I always liked this figure. I think it's pretty well made, and it looks like the character. But it just never really satisfied my needs. I was like, I wish I had a bigger figure, one that moved better, you know, like, this just isn't good enough. And then it was just, like, literally earlier this year, maybe late last year, I think it was this year, that I got this new Iron Giant figure from Diamond Select Toys. So here you go. This is an Iron Giant. He is like probably about 8 inches tall. He's like really articulated with all these ball joints. So his elbows, knees can move. He had interchangeable hands. He can bend at the knee, his toes. You know, lots of great movement. His mouth is articulated. He even has a switch on his back so his eyes light up. He's got his little buddy Hogarth can sit on his shoulder. He's got this removable S that clips onto him so he can have that Superman look. So I absolutely love this figure. This is a contender for action figure of the year for me when all is said and done. I think it's fantastic. So it's kind of mind-boggling even to myself that a couple of months after I got this figure, which I consider basically the perfect Iron Giant figure, Super 7 announced that they were going to be doing Iron Giant reaction figures, and my first thought was, oh, I want those. Which is crazy because basically this is a reaction figure. It's the same size, the same movement, same kind of sculpting. And for 20 years I said, man, I wish I had a better Iron Giant than this. I get one, and then as soon as I see the reaction figures, I wanted them, and it doesn't even make sense to me, but that's just being a toy collector, I guess. So Super 7 announced they were doing 3 types of Iron Giant. They were basically doing this one, which is just a solid, you know, a standard Iron Giant that looks just like this. And then they were doing this version. So there was a version with the Superman S, and I think one version had the mouth open and one version has it closed. I'm not sure which one is which. And they look like nice figures. I didn't order either of those. I might in the future. But the one figure I had to have was this reaction figure. And this is the Iron Giant in his attack mode. So if you've seen the movie, you know, the whole thing is that he's an alien that crash lands on Earth. He bangs his head, hence the dent that you see in his head here, so he doesn't really remember his purpose. He befriends a little kid. You know, it's kind of like an E.T. movie. The kid and him become friends. And, you know, the Iron Giant's trying to understand himself, and he's reading the kid's comic books, and he wants to be a hero like Superman, which is why he rips this like S off of a gas station and puts it on his chest because he wants to be a hero. It's only later when the army start to attack him and almost kill his little friend there that his mind kind of snaps back to its original form, that he is supposed to be an invader who came to conquer Earth. And so he snaps into attack mode, and all these like weird laser beams, looks like something right out of War of the Worlds, come out. His chest opens up, this big laser comes out, his eyes narrow, and he's got these little red pupils. His head shrinks down into his chest. Both of his arms open up to expose these weird type of cannons. You know, he's got little lasers even on his legs. You know, it was a pretty intense scene, and he's, you know, he looks pretty scary, as you can see on the card art, when he goes into kill mode there. So, as great as this figure is, the only thing that could have made it greater is if it had the swappable parts. Like if you could click these things on there and, you know, open his chest up and give him the attack mode. That might have been a lot to ask of one figure, and maybe it would have cluttered him up a little bit with too much kibble. So I'm absolutely fine with that figure. But yeah, as far as reaction figure goes, you know, so there was the standard one, the Superman one, and then the attack mode one. And the attack mode one, I was super excited to finally get it. I'm tempted to open him up just so I can maybe display him side by side with this guy. I haven't decided if I'm going to or not. So for now, I think I'm going to leave him carded. But yeah, it's a beautiful card and an awesome looking figure. So there you go. That's the Iron Giant. So the next figure I want to talk about is kind of a weird one. It's Powdered Toast Man. Now, if you're not familiar with Powdered Toast Man, he is a superhero who was kind of a side character in the Ren and Stimpy cartoon of the 90s. So I really enjoyed Ren and Stimpy. It came out when I was probably in junior high to high school, and I watched it pretty religiously. I thought both Ren and Stimpy were pretty funny, but they weren't ever characters that I really ever felt that I needed action figures of, necessarily. In the same way, like, I like Bugs Bunny, but I don't really need a Bugs Bunny action figure. But Powder Toast Man, being a superhero, he kind of spoke my language a little bit more, and I always thought he was really fun, and I wanted a Powder Toast Man action figure. Now, they didn't really make any Ren and Stimpy action figures, at least not for a good long time. So I picked up this guy. Again, going back to my Blockbuster days, we sold these little... so he's like a soft plastic. You can kind of bend him a little bit, but he's attached to this base permanently. It's got his little catchphrase, "Leave everything to me," on there. And yeah, so he's just a little sculpted, almost statue. And so I bought this, and I've had it in my collection for a long time, and I think he looks great. You know, but I always did kind of want an action figure of him. It was only a couple of years ago. I went into Walmart, and they had a little pack of 5 of these little figures, and they don't move. So a lot like him, he's just like a solid piece of plastic. He doesn't have a display base attached to him, so at least he feels a little bit more like a figurine instead of a statue. But it came with Ren and Stimpy and Powder Toast Man and 1 or 2 other characters. I can't even really remember who was in the pack, because I took all of them and I kind of put them in my miscellaneous toy bucket. Those where I keep things that aren't on display. Powder Toast Man is the only figure I really wanted from the pack, and he's the only one that I've had on display. So I have both of these figures up on one of my clear cases right now. And this one's kind of neat because his face is actually sculpted, as opposed to that one, which is just kind of printed on a flat surface. This guy here, you'll also notice he's covered in sparkles. You can actually feel them. It's like rough, kind of like sand. I could probably knock them off with my fingers. And that's kind of weird, but at the same time, if you recall Powder Toast Man, his whole thing was that he would scrape powdered toast off of himself into children's bowls, and it would be a breakfast cereal. So I guess that's supposed to be powdered toast that's sparkling all over him. So pretty cool. It was nice to have both of these Powdered Toast Men in my collections, but I still always kind of wanted an action figure, and Super 7 has finally given that to me in the form of this Powdered Toast Man ReAction figure. So, you know, he looks very similar to those guys. The colors are very similar. The main difference being he's got a really nice sculpted face there, and then he's articulated for the first time. So his arms move. I actually don't know if his head turns. I don't think it does. So most ReAction figures have 5 points of articulation, but I guess he only has 4. So his legs can go forward, and his arms can go forward, and that's about it. His head doesn't turn. Don't necessarily quote me on that, but I don't want to force it. Because of the awkward shape of his head, it wouldn't surprise me if it doesn't turn. But yeah, it's a great little figure, a weird little figure to have in my collection, but I love it. He also came with, for an accessory, he came with this little kitten character, which is a cat that he would rescue from a tree in the cartoon. I should just note that that little kitten character does not stand up on its own. I've just been wrestling with it for a minute or so, trying to get it to stand upright, and I just keep knocking all my Powdered Toast Men down. So yeah, I'm just going to leave the kitten on the ground like that. Before we move on to the next figure, I just want to show you the packaging for this guy, because it was kind of unique and kind of cool. So here is the Powdered Toast Man card. You can see it's got this glorious big piece of art of Powdered Toast Man smiling and sparkling there on the package. It's got the Ren and Stimpy logo. You got his name across there. So with this one, I did just slice along the side of the bubble, so I can put Powdered Toast Man back in there, and he will basically look like he is still a carded figure. And I can pin him up on my wall, which is what I do with most of these ReAction figures. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that with Powdered Toast Man, just because you see the shape of this card is like a big piece of toast, and it's very kind of awkward. Most of my figures come on rectangular cards, so I can put them beside each other and on top of one another nice and easily. But with this one here, it's so awkward. I just don't know if it's going to really work tacked up on my wall, which is partly why I opened up this Powdered Toast Man, because I think I might just display him loose somewhere. On the back of the card, You just see a bit of a cross promotion for the other two figures available in the line, Ren and Stimpy, which I did not get. But, damn it. Anyway, it's a fun figure and a fun card, too. So this next ReAction figure is pretty cool. It was announced, I think it was probably this year, possibly last year, that Super 7 announced that they had the license to Godzilla. I think it must have been this year, because I think I remember talking about in my recap of 2020 video that some of the bad news was that NECA had lost the license to Godzilla. And I was kind of sad about that because I was really liking the figures that NECA had been making. And I thought when NECA lost the license, I thought all that we were going to get for Godzilla toys was the kind of cheap, kind of kiddie ones that you find at Walmart nowadays. I don't know who makes them. Might even be Bandai. I don't know. But, you know, they're big, hollow kind of plastic ones. The ones associated with Godzilla versus Kong, like the movie. I don't think the toys are very good quality, and I don't really feel like collecting them. So, yeah, if that was all I was going to be able to get, I thought that kind of sucked. But it was not too long after that announcement that NECA lost the license that we found out that Super 7 got the license. And Super 7 intended to do both Ultimate figures, which is their like 6 or 7 inch line of heavily detailed, articulated, lots of accessory line of figures. So we still haven't seen any of those. But they were also doing ReAction figures, which is their 5 points of articulation line. So I've been, you know, waiting with bated breath to see what they were going to do in both of those lines. And the first example we got was this here. This was an exclusive. I think it was associated with the San Diego Comic-Con. I could be wrong. It might have been another convention. But basically, ever since COVID hit, instead of having exclusives available at the conventions, Super 7 has been saying, okay, this weekend would have been San Diego. You know, in normal times, we would have been at the con selling exclusive figures. But since we can't be there, we're just going to put up our exclusive figures on our website. You got to act fast in order to get them. So, yeah, this Godzilla was one of the figures that they put up on their website. And I was able to snag one. And it kind of pained me to do so because this figure wasn't crazy expensive. But the shipping on just one figure is kind of crazy. So, you know, it would have been better for me to say, okay, is there other figures I can add to the cart to at least lessen, you know, the shipping is less if I get more figures. But when you're in a mad scramble to get these things in your cart and get checked out, because I've had plenty of bad experience buying convention exclusives that they disappear out of your cart if you dilly-dally too long. So I basically bought this thing, threw it in my cart, agreed to pay whatever the hell they wanted to charge me. And when all's said and done, I think this figure with the conversion and the shipping, like this probably cost me about 60 bucks Canadian, which is kind of crazy for a little ReAction figure. But anyway, one of the neat things about it is this box. So instead of the card that you usually see with these ReAction figures, you get this little box, which is a replica of this figure. So back in, I don't know, I probably should have looked it up first, the 70s, maybe, there was this toy line called Shogun, and they made these big robot figures, and basically they took big robots from a couple of different properties, and they made them into these big, I think they were like 24 inches, the original figures, and they weren't very posable. They only had a few points of articulation, but they had a button on the back where their fist would fly off, and that made sense for robots. But then they put Godzilla in the line, and he also had a fist that flew off. It was kind of weird. That toy would have been before my time, but it is, you know, an important piece of Godzilla history. I don't know if it's necessarily the first officially licensed Godzilla figure, but it was definitely one of the early ones, especially here in North America at least. So a very cool figure. I would like to add that to my collection one day, but it's expensive and very hard to find. I'll probably never will own it. So the fact that Super 7 gave us a replica of it, including the box, you know, that's pretty cool. So this thing here, basically, I just had to slice the little stickers there, and then this thing just opened up like so. Bear with me. So yeah, so that just came off, and the figure was tucked along inside, and I've got them right here. Boom. So this is the first Godzilla figure in Super 7's ReAction line. I hope we get a lot more in the future. But yeah, he's pretty cool. Like you see, he's got the 5 points of articulation, arms, legs, and the head turns. And yeah, I don't have the figure to compare it to, but I think this is probably pretty spot on to what that original Shogun 70s, possibly 60s toy looked like. So he does not have the flying fist action. They could not replicate that. And I think that's because, you know, ReAction figures are supposed to be 5 points of articulation. They're not supposed to be complicated. You don't want to work in action features and things like that. So on the old figure, I think you pressed one of these scales and its fist flew off. But they were able to retain this little feature, which you push this little lever on his head and some flames come out of his mouth. So that replicates Godzilla's atomic breath, I suppose. Not super successfully, and to be honest, I don't really love it. I'd probably like this figure better without that. But for people that maybe had this figure when they were young and they really wanted a true replica of that figure, I guess it's pretty cool that they gave us that feature as well. So yeah, very cool figure. You know, like, it's weird looking. It's not necessarily, you know, if you look at it and say, is this a good Godzilla figure? Kind of not. It doesn't really look like Godzilla. It almost looks more like one of those aliens from the TV show V than Godzilla to me. But, you know, this is what kids played with back in the day, and I appreciate that Super 7 recreated this. I hope this isn't the only Godzilla, because obviously I'd like ReAction figures that look more like Godzilla did in the actual movies and maybe in the comic books and all that stuff. But this is off to a pretty good start. Now, if you're after this figure, you're probably going to have to pay some pretty big prices on the secondary market, because it did sell out like that first day. However, Super 7 has just announced that they're doing another version of this. It's got a new paint job where its head and its hands and I think its feet all glow in the dark, which again might look kind of weird, and you're like, why would they make this figure? But that's to replicate an old model kit that used to be available for Godzilla with the glow in the dark head and stuff. So that might be kind of neat. So if you like the look of this figure, you can have a chance to get at least that variation. So yeah, there you go. Super 7's ReAction Godzilla. Now this next ReAction figure I've got is of the rapper, the Notorious B.I.G. So you've got, for the card art, you've got the artwork from one of his albums. So it's pretty straightforward. And then you see we got the figure inside there, wearing his cap, leather jacket, kind of work boots. He's got a gold chain that goes around his neck. On the back, again, you just get the album artwork and a little bit of a write-up on the Notorious B.I.G. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not generally a fan of rap, and I'm not particularly a fan of the Notorious B.I.G. either. You know, I appreciate his importance to the genre and all that sort of stuff, but the only reason I bought this figure is because I intend to use it for a custom. I am not one to do figure customizations, but I had an idea for this one, and I'm getting a buddy that paints miniatures to help me out with this. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to show you this figure again sometime after it's been customized. So yeah, I just thought I would show it to you in its original form before I muck it all up. So this next figure I have to show you is not actually a ReAction figure, but it's in the same wheelhouse. Super 7, and actually it was Funko that started the ReAction figure line, and Super 7 picked it up from them. But they kind of started this trend of going back to the 5 point of articulation retro figures of the 70s and early 80s. And because that line seems to be doing so well for them, a lot of other companies are kind of jumping on the bandwagon. So for example, you've seen Hasbro release their kind of, what do they call it, the retro collection of their Star Wars figures. So they're re-releasing the old Star Wars figures from the 80s. And they're also creating new characters like the Mandalorian in that old style. And what you're seeing here is Hasbro making Marvel Legends. So rather than the 6-inch highly articulated Marvel Legends we're used to, they're making these 5 points of articulation, very simple figures. Now I think these guys might actually have 7 points. You'll notice there's a slit there, kind of in the forearm. So I think their legs, their arms, their heads, and then they turn at the forearm. So not quite 5 points, but essentially. But yeah, just like reaction figures, you get this really nice vintage looking card art with this great image of Silver Surfer here on the back. You get a little kind of smaller version of that image. You get a little bit of a bio. So yeah, very cool. I like these figures a lot. This is from wave 3. So they put out the first 2 waves, and I only bought 2 figures from those waves. I bought Spider-Man and Electro. And really the only reason I got Electro, like I do like Electro, and I think he looks great in this retro format, but him and Spider-Man came in a 2-pack together that I ordered from Hasbro Pulse. But otherwise I probably would have just bought Spider-Man on his own. Because I do really like these figures. I think the cards look great, but I know full well that the Marvel Universe is so expansive that if I decided to go all in on this line, it could get out of control real fast. I already buy the 6-inch Marvel Legends, so when it comes to these smaller ones, I said I'm only going to buy my absolute favorite characters. So that's Spider-Man, Silver Surfer. If they make a Green Goblin or Thanos, then I might get those guys. But I'm not going to let myself buy Daredevil, Captain America, even though I like those characters. They're not my absolute favorites. So yeah, I bought this Silver Surfer. I'm going to keep him carded, and I'm going to just hang him on the wall next to my Spider-Man and Electro. Another reason I didn't really want to go all in on this line is because I went pretty deep on the 3 3/4-inch Marvel Universe line just a few years ago, and they were more, they were still this size figure, but they were more detailed and more articulated. So, for example, here's one of the Silver Surfers I have from that line. So you see he comes with his surfboard, and he's articulated in that his head, it's ball jointed, so it can look up and down, not just side to side. He's got this chest articulation so he can move his ball jointed elbows, he's got knees, he's got the mid forearm, he's got double jointed knees, ankles, lots of movement. But this line, often the figures look kind of wonky because I thought they were too skinny, and at this size I don't think the articulation really worked for them. So I actually think this Silver Surfer looks better. So that's one Surfer. He's the closest one to Silver I have. I think he actually looks better on screen right now than he does in person. He's not as silver as he might appear. He's got a lot of kind of whiteness to him. I never really loved that figure. This one here is kind of translucent, so you can kind of see through him. And he looks more like an Iceman than a Silver Surfer to me. But this is basically the same figure as that one. And then there's this version, and he's basically white with some gray, like kind of an overwash. So I had 3 Silver Surfers from that line, and none of them really met my expectations. I wanted just a nice Silver Surfer. Ideally chrome, but I know that's kind of tough to pull off. I wish this Silver Surfer had been chromed, like vac metal, like Destro's mask or something. But it is a nice silver paint job, and I think this Silver Surfer in this nice simple format works better than any of those previous figures. So yeah, really cool stuff from Hasbro. So those were all the reaction figures I had to show you for now. So let's wrap this up by quickly going through a couple of Funko Pops that I got. So I mentioned earlier that I collect the Masters of the Universe Funko Pops. I think I'm actually going to wind down in collecting these because there's just too many exclusives that I realize I'll never have a full set. But so with this most recent wave of figures that came out, so you can see here there was Clamp Champ and Dragstore, the Horde Trooper. I had an opportunity to get all of them, Evil Lynn as well, but this is a repaint of Evil Lynn. I already have another version of her, but I passed on all these characters, which was kind of hard to do because I already have a collection of probably 20 plus Funko Pops of Masters of the Universe. But I just decided to kind of cut it off now because, like I mentioned, there's just too many figures that I'm not going to get. And, I'm buying these characters in the Origins. I already have them in the Classics. And so, yeah, whatever. But when it comes to Mer-Man, I had to get him because he's my all-time favorite character. So I already had one Funko Pop of Mer-Man that came out a couple of years ago. He doesn't stand up on his own very well, but this is him based more on his animated look. So this was a great figure. I really dig it. But this one here, they decided to base more on the vintage toy. So you get that more kind of cat-like design of the head. The bodies are different. So this guy's got his spear, where this guy's got his kind of corncob sword there. And yeah, so it's pretty cool. I like Mer-Man, and now I got 2 of them. And lastly, I've got a couple of more characters from The Office. The Office is perhaps my all-time favorite TV show. I always loved Seinfeld too, but The Office is great because my wife does not like Seinfeld, but she enjoys The Office just as much as I do. So we end up watching repeats of this show all the time. Like, I've seen The Office way more times than I've seen anything else. It's a great show. I've been slowly building my full office of characters. And both of these guys here, Creed and Ryan, were characters that I didn't have already. So I ordered this guy from Big Bad Toy Store a little while ago. And this guy, I didn't even know this figure existed. I just kind of stumbled across it at Walmart the other day. So it was pretty cool to grab both of these guys. So here is Creed and Ryan outside of the box. You know, these figures are, I guess, you know, they do the job. Like, if I were to set up a little office display, I could put this guy in here, and he's Creed. But both of these guys kind of suffer from a problem with Funko Pops that I don't like. I don't like when you can't tell who the character is. Like, as soon as I take this guy out of the box and it doesn't say Creed Bratton anywhere near him anymore, I could set this guy on my desk at work and nobody would have 2 sweet clues who the hell this is supposed to be. They could say, is that George Clooney? Is that Bill Clinton? Or, like, I don't know. It doesn't really have any defining features to say that this looks like Creed. And that's not really Funko's fault, because Creed just doesn't have any super defining characteristics. It's not like somebody like Mer-Man, where you can look at him at a glance and know that that's Mer-Man. They could have maybe given him one of his scene-specific gags, but I actually don't really like that. I kind of prefer them in a neutral position like this. Like, for example, I have Andy Bernard in a sumo wrestler outfit, and I have Kevin carrying a pot of chili. And so maybe those help to, make the characters recognizable, because those were kind of iconic scenes. But if I were to set up a little office display, now my Kevin is always going to be carrying chili around, and I don't really like that. With Ryan, this also doesn't say Ryan Howard to me. If you gave me this figure without the box and said, guess who this is, I would have no idea. Part of the problem is they've given him his frosted tips, which he definitely had for a while, but I more associate him with the darker hair. Maybe even if they gave him his bearded look, that might have helped. So yeah, I'm glad to have a Ryan Howard to fill out my collection, but these aren't really particularly great or particularly interesting figures. But anyway, there you go. Those are my latest Funko Pop purchases. So that is my new ReAction figure and my new Funko purchases. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me comments below. All that stuff is very much appreciated. So thank you for watching, and I'll be back with another video soon, and I'll see you then. Ciao.